Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final topic of Unit 2. This is topic 2.9, International Trade and Public Policy. Today, you're going to learn about the world and domestic price and how they differ. You should be able to explain the use of tariffs and quotas and what they are, and also be able to determine the consumer price, the consumer surplus, the producer surplus, and the deadweight loss at the world price. Let me just grab a highlighter here. One of these tabs. There we go. So we got a highlighter. Let's get to it. So international trade. Now, countries can produce their own products at the domestic price, but they can also go out and produce or buy products at a cheaper world price. And because that price is cheaper, countries have a couple of options to raise the price. One of them is to establish a tariff. If they put a tariff on imports, it's just a tax. It's a tax on imports that increases the world price. They could also just establish a quota, and the quota would limit the number of imports coming into the country. Now, why do they do that? Well, the purpose of both tariffs and quotas is to protect the domestic market. So it protects domestic producers from a cheaper world price, but it also prevents domestic unemployment. So this is more employment domestically. Now, when you purchase goods at a lower price, let's look at a graph here. We can see what happens to our consumer surplus and producer surplus before and after the change or a world price of $2. So before the world price, we see consumer surplus here in blue, and we see in green the producer surplus, and that's because of the equilibrium price at $5 and a quantity of $10. Now, with the $2 world price, we can see here that's way below the equilibrium price. So producers are losing out. The domestic producers are, their surplus is much, much less. But consumers are doing really well. This is great for consumers. The consumer surplus has increased dramatically. So what happens if the country then establishes a $2 tariff? Well, that $2 tariff is going to bump up the price, $2. We see from $2 to $4. And we can see here that our producers are going to do better. There's more producer surplus in green. There's less consumer surplus in blue. And we can even determine what the tariff would be. And that's going to be the price times the quantity. So it's the price of the tariff, $2, times the quantity at that new $4 price. And that's going to be 11 minus 9. So $2 times 2 of whatever it is, 2 units, and it's going to be 4. So a common question you might get looks something like this, and it looks kind of confusing, but we can get a lot of information from these different segments. This graph shows the domestic supply and demand for grain, and the letters represent an area. So from this, we would be able to get the consumer surplus with no trade. So number 1 is consumer surplus with no trade, and that's going to be just H, excuse me, with no trade is just H. Producer surplus with no trade is going to be this triangle here, which is TLI. Let's see if I can erase this now. That's a teacher coming in, so don't mind him. We can also get the amount imported at world price. So if we look at the world price here at PW, price of W, and we look at the quantity, we would be able to see the world price quantity 5 minus the quantity 1. So quantity 5 minus quantity 1 would be the amount that we import. Now that changes our producer surplus then if we trade it at world price. So if we trade it at that world price, then the producers only gain this area of T. So that would be the producer surplus at their world price. Consumer surplus at world price is going to be a much larger area. At the world price, this consumer surplus is going to be this giant area here, which includes H, I, J, K, L, M, N, R, and S. So now if the government decides to establish a tariff, which leads to a world price of P at T, so this is the price at the tariff, we can determine how much is imported and what the new consumer surplus and producer surplus is. So imported price, we would take the price at the tariff, and we would see where it crosses the supply and demand curve at Q and Q4 and Q2. So that would be how much is imported, Q4 minus Q2. And the consumer surplus then would be smaller. It would just be this HIJK filled in with yellow here, triangle. And producers would have a larger chunk, and that would be the T and the L areas. So that's the kind of question you might get with this world price graph. This is the end of this topic. You should be able to explain how the world and domestic price differ, explain the use of tariffs and quotas, and determine consumer surplus, producer surplus, and deadweight loss at world price. As always, check your notes, submit the guided notes, and do your practice, and see me if you have any questions. Thanks.